A recent study showed that among racial and political groups, white liberals were the only group to have an out-group bias, meaning they're less likely to like people like themselves. Now, for the most part, people in America have a very small in-group bias. I believe it's around less than 20% of people show that bias. But what do you think the end result is going to be when white liberals tend not to like themselves or prefer people who are not white? Eventually, for race-based reasons, you will see political decisions, which brings me to this huge story. I mean, this is serious if you were to ask me. Several white Democrats have resigned from the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, over demands for more diversity. It started with one person at the top, and then slowly more started to resign. Now, not everybody who resigned is white, but we can see that there's a lot of uproar and outrage over the fact that there aren't non-white people working for the DCCC. Keeping in mind, majority of this country is white. The Democrats are on a clear and obvious path, but admittedly, so are Republicans. When you look at the parties, you can point out that Democrats tend to be people of color, Republicans tend to be white, and I think this is extremely dangerous, especially as now white Democrats resign, and we have more stories emerging saying the 2020 Democratic presidential candidate shouldn't be white or a man. Now, I don't care who or what they are, but when they're saying it shouldn't be something is when you should get alarmed. Because I feel if this is the track we're on, we're eventually going to be led down a path where you have a white wing and a non-white wing as opposed to a policy-based wing. That will be very creepy and dangerous. And I gotta say, the Democrats are walking that line. Outside of this story, I do want to go over concerns the Democrats are going too far left, especially with the Democratic debate coming up tonight, and fears they will continue to push leftward and, based on the story we're seeing here, continue to embrace identitarian ideology, which will only cause extreme racial division. Now, before we get started with this Politico story, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address, but of course, the best thing you can do, share this video. YouTube has deranked independent political commentary, which means I rely on word of mouth to grow the channel, and that's how it should be. Well, maybe it shouldn't, but it's how business tended to be. I'm not going to be reliant on Google. If you like it, you can share it. If you don't, feel free not to. Let's read. Politico reports DCCC faces mass staff upheaval after uproar over diversity. The departures come as Chairwoman Cheri Bustos faces accusations that she has done little to address the lack of diversity in the upper ranks of the campaign arm. They report on Monday morning, Allison Jaslow, the executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, a close ally of Rep. Cheri Bustos, Democrat from Illinois, chair of the committee, resigned during a tense meeting at the party's Capitol Hill headquarters. And in the next 10 hours, much of the senior staff was out. Jared Smith, communications director, and another Bustos ally. Melissa Miller, a top communications aide. Molly Rittner, political director. Nick Pancrazio, deputy executive director, and Van Ornelas, the DCCC's director of diversity. Jackie Newman, the chief operating officer for the campaign arm, will serve as interim executive director and facilitate the search for a permanent replacement, Bustos said in a statement late Monday. Today has been a sobering day filled with tough conversations that too often we avoid, Bustos said. But I can say confidently that we are taking the first steps towards putting the DCCC back on path to protect and expand our majority, with a staff that truly reflects the diversity of our Democratic caucus and our party. Rittner was one of two national political directors at the DCCC. Corey Kozlowski, the other national political director, is still with the campaign arm, according to multiple sources. While most of the staff departures are effective immediately, Miller is expected to remain at DCCC temporarily to help transition a new communications team, according to sources. Now, I believe they mentioned that it was Allison Jaslow, who was the executive director, was first to resign, which precipitated then the resignations or departures of several more top Democrats in the DCCC. On Twitter, Allison Jaslow tweeted, "My statement on stepping down from my post at the DCCC," I really hate saying that, we'll call it, yes, but let's read her statement. She says, "When I was in 8th grade, I decided that my life would be dedicated to serving my country. I did that first in uniform, but since have tried to be a force of good in our politics. My commitment to the mission, our country, and the people who commit their lives to serving it is unwavering. And sometimes selfless service means having the courage to take a bow for the sake of the mission, especially when the stakes are so high. As I told the team today, they are without a doubt the most talented group of people I have ever worked with in my life. It was an honor and a true privilege to work with them every day and know with confidence that the Democratic House majority will be protected with the relentless dedication and under the leadership of Chairwoman Bustos. I actually am not entirely convinced. There was one study I looked at showing that Trump voters did not come out for the midterms. When they come out in 2020, it is likely, many people believe, maybe not, not a 100% guarantee, the Democrats will lose their majority. But let's move on to another story yesterday I really want to highlight one important aspect of this. They say that the executive director resigned abruptly on Monday amid members' complaints that the committee's upper echelons lacked diversity. And it is from this we see today's story, that now many, many more people have resigned. I want to highlight this study here. This is from tabletmag.com, America's White Saviors. They show this, mean in-group bias by race ethnicity. I've highlighted this before, but it's pretty relevant here. We can see that among Black, Hispanic, and Asians, they have an in-group preference. Non-liberal whites have a slight in-group preference, but white liberals have a slight out-group preference, meaning they tend not to like people like themselves. What you will then see is stories exactly like this. Expect more. I fully expect to see many, many more stories like this. How many stories have we seen where they ask, should the Democratic 2020 presidential candidate be a white person? If that's the question they're asking, and they're not focused on policy, I believe the Democrats are in serious trouble for a few reasons. Many people in this country, 66 or so percent, I could be getting the number wrong, are white. They're not going to want to hear this except for those white liberals who have an out-group bias. However, many of the more passive liberals, known as the exhausted majority, are more concerned with policy. They're probably not going to be swayed by this. I'd imagine either it will do nothing or it will be a net negative for one simple reason. Imagine you have white liberals, some of whom, only a small percentage, on a scale of 0 to 100, there is around a 13.17 score for out-group bias. That means most white liberals don't have this. You will see that fracture. Yes, there will be some white liberals who cheer on the decision to remove white people on the basis of being white, but you will see many more white people confused as to why it's happening when it has nothing to do with policy. And you will probably see some white people scared that they are being targeted for things they can't change. People don't like that. It doesn't make people feel good. So we can move on now and see this story from Reuters to kind of, point this out. Democrats grapple with electability question as white men lead diverse field. This story from May reads, Democrats seeking to unseat Republican U.S. President Donald Trump will choose from the largest and most diverse set of candidates in history, yet so far, 2 older white men are leading the pack. Why does that matter? Well, on the Republican side, you will likely see a lot of white faces. On the Democrat side, you will see a mix. However, what's happening is, look, the Democrats can cheer on the fact that there's minority representation on the Democratic side, but they're not actually being fair, and they're not actually catering to the true idea of diversity. If you want to be truly diverse, each and every one of these people should stand an equal chance. However, what they're actually saying is, because you're white, you shouldn't be the candidate, and that's absurd. Maybe in time there will be more candidates who make it, but we do have a diverse field, and it's a meritocracy. To the winner go the spoil. If you are the best, you will win. Instead, they're saying Bernie shouldn't be. And I'm going to say it's true, yes. There were celebrities, notably Amber Tamblyn, saying she wouldn't support Bernie because he was a man. Has nothing to do with politics. You are not going to win over the majority of this country, particularly moderates, by pandering to identity. When I can show you again, on a scale of 0 to 100, the biases in-group or out-group for most groups, it's still really, really small, 13% or so. I'm not sure exactly how they're determining what that score means. Maybe it means everyone holds that bias, or maybe it means only that percentage of people hold that bias, but the bias exists. Most people want real plans. They want real policy. They want real choices. They want to know their lives will be better. Take a look at this story just from yesterday. McClatchy, D.C. 2020 Democrats shifting left. Moderates fret they'll shift even further at the next debate. And I know for many of you, you've heard me make this point, but I have to make it because each video is independent and not everybody watches every single video. But let me stress, if the Democrats sacrifice the center to get new left-wing voters, the center may end up voting right, okay? Moderates are in between Democrat and Republican. The far right and the far left are not. If you gain a progressive voter but lose a centrist, Republicans may pick up that centrist. The battle in this country in 2020 is going to be it's going to be who can win over the middle, period. Now, the Democrats, the far left Democrats, believe there is this untapped pool of far left voters they could wake up, but I assure you, those people will be in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, not in Ohio, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Those are the states you need to win that Trump, no one thought Trump was going to win, but he did. You need to win over those states. And there's not going to be a large swath of far left voters in those states. The voters you are pointing to are in big cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles. But you know what? Many of these far left progressives are there too, and they're the ones pushing this. They're the ones convinced by getting more far left votes they'll win. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you will find Ohio does have many far left individuals, but I kind of just don't believe the working class individuals who lost their factory jobs in the middle of these states believe socialism is the answer. In fact, I'd be willing to bet they completely disagree. But let's move on. In the last debate, as we now move into tonight's CNN debates, I have this story from just last week. U.S. public opposes reparations and decriminalizing illegal entry. Let me now loop these stories together and explain to you what you may have already known if you've watched my videos. What frustrates me about the Democrats is their obsession with social media. The fact that DCCC members would resign because people are complaining about diversity shows they're increasingly adopting woke ideology. The fact that they would propose reparations and decriminalizing illegal entry, it shows they're obsessed with Twitter. In a story I covered yesterday, talking about Democratic governors were saying, you're going too far left, Trump is going to win. They point out of the primary voters who these people need to win over, only 3 in 10 want to abolish ICE. But 64% of people who tweet at least once a day believe in abolishing ICE. Minds are being twisted by Twitter, and you have a lot of journalists who have an unhealthy relationship with the platform, and that's according to Brian Stelter of CNN, who then parrot this rhetoric. The Democrats read these articles from these woke clickbait blogs and believe it, and then you get Democrats resigning. Let me just stress how serious this is. Democrats from the DCCC resigning over the color of their skin. Meanwhile, on the debate stage, they're proposing things Americans don't want. And how about this? From a Marist poll with, I believe this is Marist, I'm not sure who else worked on it. They say, there are warning signs facing the Democratic field. Medicare for all, which replaces private insurance, health insurance for illegal immigrants, decriminalizing border crossings, eliminating the death penalty, universal basic income, and reparations for slavery are some of the issues where Democrats are out of step. And here's a quote. The Democratic field needs to tread carefully to energize its base without sacrificing independents who are now siding with them on many issues, says Dr. Lee M. Mirengoff, director of the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion. For independents, they could end up aligning with Donald Trump or supporting the Democratic nominee. It depends on which issues ultimately dominate the campaign. The context here is they point out there are some ideas that independents are interested in, but they're increasingly pushing rhetoric independents do not like. Don't take it from me. Do whatever you want. But Trump knows the game better than anybody. He's a master at manipulating the media, and it is not my opinion. I mean, I do believe that too, but that is coming from CNN's political analyst, or one of their political analysts, saying Trump is a dangerous media manipulator. I'm looking at what the Democrats are doing, and I see them falling into this trap every single day. But now let's talk about how the Democrats are in shambles. You know what, man? They don't like the fact that I talk about this. They don't like the fact that we are entering the 2020 cycle and they expect me to talk about Trump's impeachment, but Americans don't care about Trump's impeachment. And I'm going to go over this. I'm going to go over this in a segment after this for my second channel, because it is entirely its own segment. The Democrats are close to a majority on voting for impeachment, but the American people don't care. Who are you catering to? It's shocking to me. It really is. Take a look at this. RNC raises $14.6 million in May, more than doubling the DNC. Why is that? Why is the RNC doubling the fundraising efforts of the DNC? This should be shocking to everyone. These are coming from small donors, at least it's my understanding. Many of the overwhelming majority, I think like 90+% of Trump's fundraising, Trump specifically, not the RNC, was less than $200. He has overwhelming support in terms of people giving money. Now, you can talk about polls all day and night, but the polls are wrong in 2016. The polls could be wrong today. But let's talk about people putting their money where their mouth is. The DNC is raising less than half of what the RNC is. You know what it says to me? When it comes to politics, when it comes to those who will vote, Republicans are putting their money where their mouth is. They really believe this. And the Democrats aren't really paying attention, nor do they care. The Democrats are resigning over race. They're continually pushing far-left policies Americans don't want, and thus Democrats don't spend money, don't donate money, which in turn means Democratic candidates are going to have less to work with in terms of advertising, marketing, and campaigning. But I want to make sure I highlight or get to at least a little bit the impeachment stuff. I'm going to do a bigger segment on impeachment, but I just want to make sure I show these in the clip and make a couple more closing points as we move on. First, debates are tonight. I hope you're all ready, and I hope you enjoy them. There is a growing concern that, where's the article? Here we go. A growing concern that the Democrats are going to shift further at the next debate. I believe that will be the case, because the Democrats don't care about what Americans want. I genuinely believe this, okay? Right now, there are some Democrats who are fantastic, who I really like. And you know, I always say Tulsi Gabbard's great, Andrew Yang is great. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with either of them on most, or I shouldn't say on all of their positions, but many of them, maybe even most. I've gone through their platforms. I like what they're doing. But even conservatives have been able to point out they're the common sense Democrats. They're the outliers. They are not what the Democratic Party is, and they don't represent the majority of the Democrats. When I look at what they're doing with impeachment, when I look at the far left nonsense, when I look at the resignations, it says to me the Democrats don't care about what Americans are talking about. They're talking about immigration. They're talking about healthcare. They're talking about the economy. What are the Democrats talking about? Impeachment. It's like they can only really point to the fact that they're sore losers. Trump is a bad man. He should be impeached. Well, I'm sorry to say it. Even with this story about House Democrats inching towards impeachment, there's been no impeachment bump after Mueller's testimony. Why did the Democratic politicians sway towards impeachment when the American people did not? Because they don't care about what the American people think. They care about themselves and what they're campaigning on. Meanwhile, Trump is using data analytics and he's tracking the polls and he's campaigning on things that Americans support. The death penalty, for instance. I am very much opposed to it. I made a video about it, got a ton of dislikes. Don't care. That's what I believe in. I'm willing to accept those dislikes because I know I'm out of step with the majority. That's just the way things work. But in reality, the majority of this country does support the death penalty. I believe it's around 59%. Even this poll from Marist, I believe it's Marist NPR PBS Marist, says that the Democrats are out of step on eliminating the death penalty. Majority of Americans are for it. Trump made that move. Bill Barr reinstated the death penalty. They put 5 people slated to be executed. That's the majority opinion. Trump is enacting things that he can see most Americans like. The Democrats, on the other hand, are doing the opposite. Even though let's read this. They say only 37% of voters say Congress should begin impeachment proceedings against Trump, according to the poll conducted Thursday. More voters, 46%, say Congress should not begin impeachment proceedings. 16% were undecided. How are we at the point now where 37% of voters are saying only 37% are saying they should do it? 46%, the bigger faction, saying don't do it. That leaves us with most of the country, 63%, either against or just not sure if it should be done. Yet the Democrats are inching closer to support for this. How is that happening? After Mueller, there was no swing. Americans still stand where they stand on impeachment, most saying don't do it. Democrats are moving towards it. They're not paying attention to what Americans are calling for. So there you have it. Here's what I can expect to happen in the future. Woke ideology will fracture the Democrats, force out their leadership, and it will result in what I fear, two parties. A party that is non-white and a party that is white, and that is terrifying. We're supposed to judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But every day the Democrats do the opposite. And don't get me wrong, there are conservatives who are racist, but conservatives overwhelmingly preach meritocracy. So you can argue that the Republicans are secretly racist. Fine, I don't care. You can argue the Democrats are secretly racist. Don't care about that either. I'm going to look at what they're saying. And the Republicans repeatedly talk about meritocracy, and the Democrats repeatedly talk about racial identitarianism. What do you think is going to happen if this persists? I think it will be very dangerous. And the only winner in this will be racial identitarians. It will force white people into a box. We've already seen it. Brett Weinstein talked about this. In a segment he called Speak of the Devil, he said the incessant anti-white rhetoric, those are my words, not how I'm paraphrasing, incessant maybe but hyperbolic for how Brett would normally phrase it. But he says, as the media keeps pushing this, you will see white people become identitarian. And there are comments where people are saying this. There are white people who are saying this. That is worrying to me, especially as someone who doesn't care for either identitarian camp. I hate all of it because I've experienced racial prejudice from both factions of the extremist identitarians, I should say. The best outcome is equality, that everybody be given a fair shake, that we continue to solve the problems of historical racism and injustice, but not in authoritarian ways and not based on giving people things because of their race. We solve these problems by addressing class issues, better teaching people to fish instead of giving them fish. Regardless of the color of their skin, everybody gets an equal shot at being taught to fish. In the end, what do we get? Democrats resign based on race, push far-left policies nobody wants, and now are moving away from American opinion while Trump moves towards it. I don't know what to expect, but tonight, the Democratic debates are on. I'm going to order a bunch of pizzas. We're going to have a bunch of friends. We got a big widescreen TV. I'm excited. So regardless of what's going on, let me just say, as most of you know, I would be more willing to vote for a principled left-leaning individual, of which I don't think very many exist, especially not the Democrats. They're a handful. I'm not trying to be mean to everybody. I'm not trying to just be tribal. I really do think there are some good Democrats who've done good things. And I do believe that for their flaws, you have AOC and Elizabeth Warren calling out big tech. Very important. Now, Tulsi Gabbard doing the same thing. Much respect across the board for the principled decision to challenge the tech oligopolies that are dangerous. The Democratic Party, however, the party I focus on because that's who I'm looking to in 2020, has failed me and continue to do so. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say failed, I must stress it's the leadership in the party because you have the outliers, the Yangs, the Gabbards, and other silly characters. I'll leave their names out of it. But for the most part, even Bernie Sanders has become an establishment crony spewing garbled talking points about Trump being, orange man bad. I don't want to hear it. I want to hear real policy. I want to hear presidential talk. I want to hear confidence. And that's why every day Tulsi Gabbard speaks, I am more and more impressed. She goes on Tucker Carlson and she talks to the other side. That's what we need. Someone where you can have a conservative say, I really disagree with Tulsi on a lot of things, but she's what the Democrats need to be. Seeing conservatives say that John Bolton should be replaced by Tulsi Gabbard, I'm clapping. I'm like, this is where we get along. This brings us together. Instead, what the Democrats do, I'll say it one more time before I sign off. The Democrats are moving away from popular opinion. Madness. Complete madness. I'm excited for the debates. It's like, I'm not into sports, football, like skateboarding, but I don't watch football. You know what I do watch? We're going to gather around. We're going to watch these debates. We're going to be tweeting. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So I hope you're looking forward to the debates as well. Thanks for hanging out. And I will see you all in the next segment where I dive into the impeachment story, youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. Stick around. I will see you there.